Thank you, Dr. Retsevlai.
Yeah, three quick thoughts. And so just to follow up on the first question by Dr. Koldruf, I would think that there should be data on this, right? Like we know which, it's probably documented diagnosis, which children had the seizure, and we know what their future, what after that, what vaccines they took and when. So I think we can actually, we don't need service for that. We can just look on the data. And I guess that's also potentially can affect what we see in the second dose, because potentially there is a subset of children that is more sensitive to the immune response to these vaccines, and since they experience such an extreme response after the first dose, maybe they don't go to the second dose as quickly or not at all. So I just would caution the fact that we don't see after the second dose does not necessarily mean that there is no potential mechanism here, but potentially it's a kind of a survival bias thing. But maybe one thing that bothers me is that we are focusing on symptoms, and I'm not sure we have a good mechanistic understanding of what's going on here. It seems that on the face of it, it seems that there is one vaccine with higher level, higher dose, higher quantity of the antigen that seems to cause, at least for some of the children, a more extreme immune response. And we are measuring it through fever and seizure, but potentially there are other things that are going on. So my question is, did we ever test those children that had the seizure to see if they have a unique immune response with other biomarkers, that just to try and understand the mechanism of what's going on here? Because from a safety perspective, I'm very concerned when we just focus on what we measure and we don't try to get to understand the biological mechanisms that are taking place here. And yeah, I know it's not easy, but it doesn't look like we are making any real effort to understand this.
I'd like to echo that, because children who are very young like this may have a heightened IL-1. IL-1 is the cytokine that causes fever. And so the question for the manufacturer and for those who study this is whether IL-1 or other cytokines were measured in the serum of these children who were febrile. And did they look at cytokine gene polymorphisms or other genetic predispositions to febrile responses, which then segues to your second concern, is that looking at downstream at the second dose, there may be a selection bias in eliminating those children, because most pediatricians, to the best of my knowledge, will not revaccinate somebody who's had a prior history of febrile seizures. So we may be looking at a selection bias in looking at the second dose. So the question then for what we would have to consider as a recommendation is what to do with the child who has had a history of febrile seizures. How do we manage their vaccination schedule the second time around?
With regard to biological mechanisms?
Yeah, were IL-1 levels measured by Merck or any other investigators in looking at febrile seizures or the genetic makeup of these children?
I would defer to experts perhaps in the SME speaker room with regard to biological mechanisms.
And then the second question was to emphasize what Recep said was, is there a selection bias then in looking at the incidence of febrile seizures for the second dose?
So that's we don't have to get a response to every comment here, so that's perfectly fine. I think that Dr. Lever's comment is excellent, that the data is there. If you wanted to look at if the effect of a febrile seizure in the child, that affects either subsequent vaccination for that child or vaccination for the younger siblings. I don't think that has been done, but certainly the data exists if you wanted to do it. I think next on the list is